So, just to recap, there are four shorter ways to graph a linear function. You have vertical lines and horizontal lines, intercepts, slope-intercept form, and point-slope form. So, to recap from Tuesday, vertical lines are x equals a number. Plot the point on the x-axis, draw a vertical line. Horizontal lines is y equals a number. Plot the point on the y-axis, draw a horizontal line. And then the second type, using intercepts. When you use intercepts, you're looking for the x-intercept and the y-intercept. X-intercept, set y equals 0, solve for x. Y-intercept, set x equals 0, solve for y. And those would be the only 2 points that would be on the graph. So that's a quick summation / getting us back to where we were from Tuesday. Now we're going to finish the first half of 2.4 by looking at slope-intercept form and point-slope form. Slope-intercept form is probably nothing new for you. Point-slope form might be a little bit. So let's do slope-intercept. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. M is the slope, b is the y-intercept. We use those two to graph the line. So for example 4, we have 5x plus 8y equals 24. So if we are using slope-intercept form, step 1, rewrite the equation into slope-intercept form if necessary. So for this equation, it's definitely necessary because that's not slope-intercept form, that's standard form. So you subtract 5x on both sides, you get 8y equals negative 5x plus 24. Then you divide everything by 8. So negative 5 over 8x plus 3. So that's first order of business. Next thing is to identify the slope and the y-intercept. So if you line it up with y equals mx plus b, you have a slope of negative 5 over 8, and you have a y-intercept of 0, 3. Now, 0 comes from the fact that if you're looking for a y-intercept, you would have set x equal to 0. That's where the 0 came from. You have your slope, you have your y-intercept. Step 3, plot the y-intercept on the graph. So go to the y-axis, put your point on 3. Use your slope to plot as many points as you can. So I have a slope of negative 5 over 8. So I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you can go down and to the right, or you can go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and to the left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Draw your line. Again, my advice is put as many points as you can using that slope, especially when we start solving systems by graphing, which we will be doing in the next unit. So, might as well get into some good practice. That's how we take care of slope-intercept form. Questions before we continue? Let's see. Here's something in the chat. Go ahead, whoever just came on mute. You get the other 2 points by using slope. So the slope is what you use to plot the other points. So since your slope is -5/8, you can go down 5 and over 8, or you go up 5 and to the left 8. But you can get the other points using your slope. On a test, would you want us to draw a graph and do this? Absolutely. Absolutely. On the quiz tomorrow, you're going to be graphing. On the homework that's due tomorrow, you're graphing. Anytime you graph, if the directions say graph, you graph. If you don't graph, don't bother putting in the homework assignment. So, both of them good questions. Any other questions before we do point slope form? Alright, not seeing your hand, Andy, so let's go to point slope form. So, the point slope form can be a little tricky because you have to pay attention with how everything is set up, but it's pretty easy to work with it. So, point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. So the 3 numbers that would be in the formula would be the slope, the x, and the y. So we have to identify the slope and the point. This is how we would do it. The slope is easy. The m value you would take as is. So if it's positive, it stays positive. If it's negative, it stays negative. For the point, however, you take the opposite of the x1 and the y. Take the opposite of the 2 numbers that are right there. Take the opposite of the 2 numbers that are in green on this notes page. So, if it's a little fuzzy, that's fine. We've got 2 examples that we're going to practice before we actually try to graph. So let's show how this works. So they're asking us to identify the slope and the coordinates of the point, and then rewrite the function into slope-intercept form. So there's 3 things we need to do. So for example 5, y minus 5 equals 3 parentheses x minus 2. So I'm going to put the point slope formula underneath so that we can identify it. So again, slope we take as is. Slope we take as is. For the point. So for the point, we take the opposite of the x1 and y1 values. X1 right now is minus 2. The opposite of minus 2, positive. Y1 is currently negative 5. The opposite of negative 5, positive 5. You take the opposite of what it started out as. Any questions before we continue? The point when we go to graph is where we will start to graph. So you already checking in on what we're doing with example 7 and 8. I like that. So now we write it in the slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept form is simply solving for y. Y minus 5 equals 3 parentheses x minus 2. So easy 2 steps, we distribute. And then we get y by itself. Add 5 to both sides. So there's all the information we can get out of example 5. Questions before we continue? Nothing in the chat. Not hearing or seeing. So, then take a moment. So for slope-intercept form, you have y plus 4 equals negative 1/2 parentheses x minus 6. So if we distribute, y plus 4 equals negative 1/2 times x, negative 1/2 x, negative 1/2 times a negative 6. So a negative times a negative is positive, half of 6 is 3. So I'm thinking you might have forgotten the positive there.
I've got the negative side.
Okay. Subtract 4, negative 1/2 x minus 1 there. So okay, remember the slope, take it as is, and 2 numbers, you take the opposites of those. That's how we get the point. Any questions before we graph? So, you got negative 6 and a positive 4. Okay, so did you take the opposites of the 2 numbers? And that's why you got it wrong. You have to take the opposites of the 2 numbers. Any other questions? 5 or 6? All right, then let's graph. So, when we go about graphing, now there are some people that will look at point slope form and say, well, if I can rewrite it into slope-intercept form, then why do I need to be bothered with needing to do it in point slope form. If that's what you feel, then that's fine. Here's one reason why I would suggest it. If you look at problem 7, y minus 1 equals negative 5 over 4 parentheses x minus 3. If you put this in the slope-intercept form, that's y equals negative 5 over 4x plus 19 over 4. So, if you want to graph that, have fun. Be my guest. Find 19 over 4 and put it on the graph. Do what you need to do. But, to avoid having to deal with that, if we can identify the slope and the point, we can still graph this function. So, let's do it using point slope form. So the first step, identify the slope, identify the point. So remember the slope, right there, we take it as is. For the point, we take the opposites of the x and y values. That's 3 and 1. Remember, if you're going to touch the number, you got to take the sign that was in front of it too. You can't take one and not the other. So, that's step 1. Step 2, plot the given point on the graph. So, 3 comma 1, 3 comma 1. So with point slope form, you're not starting on the y-axis. Most of the time, you're not starting on the y-axis. Use the slope to plot at least 2 more points. So your slope was negative 5 over 4. So that means from the point that you plotted, go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and to the right 1, 2, 3, 4. Or go up 5 and to the left 4. Draw your line. So there's your line, and you didn't have to really deal with all the messy fraction decimal stuff. 19 over 4 is right there. So there's 19 over 4, in case you plotted it using slope-intercept form. Questions on example 7? Alright, then my next example, and we'll take a short break. Y plus 5 equals 3 parentheses x minus 2. So our goal is to graph it. What's the slope? Slope is 3, or you can write it as 3 over 1. What is our point? 2 comma negative 5. So remember the process. As is, and those two we're taking the opposite. So we got our point and our slope. Put the point on the graph. So your slope is 3, up 3, to the right 1. So you can go up and to the right, or go down and to the left. Questions, examples 7 or 8. Alright, so then that wraps up 2.4b. So we already graphed, so now that we've looked at graphing a linear function, now we're going to turn around and write the linear function. Graphing it means they gave it to us. Writing it means they're going to give us the information, and we're going to produce the equation, or produce the function that it went with. So, as you can see, there are several different scenarios for writing a linear function. So there's writing vertical and horizontal lines, writing it if you're given the slope and the y-intercept, slope and a single point, 2 points on a line, a point and a line it has to be parallel to, point and a line it has to be perpendicular to. So, you got some scenarios. Which scenario you have will dictate how you solve the problem. So, in this particular lesson, we're going to heavily use 3 particular formulas. We've got slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. This is helpful when we have the slope and the y-intercept. Point-slope form, and as you can see, there's a laundry list of scenarios for that. And the slope formula, when you have 2 points, and you need to find the slope. So, it's not going to just say, use this method to do this problem. You have to look at what's given to you and make the determination. So, yes, we're going to look at several different scenarios, but it's up to you to make the determination and then solve the problem accordingly. So let's start out with something very, very quick and easy and painless, and that's a vertical or horizontal line. So, vertical lines would be x equals the given x value. So x equals whatever the x value was. You would also use this process if you have an undefined slope. So for example, 1a, horizontal line passing through 3, -4. So horizontal line corresponds with y equals. You would use that process as if it has a 0 slope. So horizontal line is y equals something. We have a y value of -4, so that's what goes in there. So there's your equation. We didn't use the 3, don't need to. Similar process for vertical line. Vertical line is x equals something. Your x value was a -2. Equals -2. I didn't use the other -2. Don't need to. So vertical and horizontal, quick, easy, relatively painless. Questions for case number 1? All right. Case 2. So, case number 2, you're given the slope and the y-intercept. So if you're given the slope and the y-intercept, plug in the slope for M, plug in the y-intercept for B. So if you're given the slope and the y-intercept, remember slope, also known as rate of change. Y-intercept could exist one of two ways. They can tell you that B is equal to something, or they could write it as 0, comma, a number. Because that's the other way you could write a y-intercept. Either way it goes, the formula that you should be utilizing, y equals mx plus b. Plug in the slope for M, plug in the y-intercept for b. That's step 1. Step 2, that's it. That's step number 2. So, let's indulge ourselves with a straightforward example and then a word problem based example. Yes, word problem based example. (2a) equation has a slope of -3/4 and passes through 0, comma, -6. So slope is -3/4. There's your slope. That's M. 0, comma, -6 is another way of telling you that this is the y-intercept. So that's B. Y equals mx plus b. (-3/x plus -6). We can't leave it that way. That's not simplified. There you go. So that's our straightforward example. Now let's do an example in a application. At Happy Travel Car Rental Company, the daily cost to rent a minivan is $19 plus 25 cents per mile. Write an equation to model the total cost Y of renting the car based on the number of miles X. So, you walk into the car rental company, you want to rent the car, you have to give them $19, and you're paying 25 cents per mile. So 25 cents per mile, so that's going to change based off of the number of miles you drive. So 25 cents is a rate of change, because that's going to change. Obviously, if you drive 5 miles, you're going to pay less money than someone who drives 500 miles. So 25 cents is your rate of change. That's your slope. That's M. $19, you have to give them $19 no matter what happens. So you don't go anywhere, you give them $19. So that is fixed. that's your y-intercept, that's your b. Any questions on how those were identified? At some point, yes, you're going to have to be able to do it yourself. So, go ahead and write the equation. We know the slope, we know the y-intercept. So y equals 0.25x plus 19. That's it, problem's over. Questions, case number 2. Cool. Case 3. Notice that each case starts to build. Case 3, a bit more work to do. Now we're given the slope, still get the slope, but now we're getting a point. So you're going to have a slope, or some kind of rate of change, and a point on the line. X1, Y1. So this is a scenario in which you would bring in point slope form. So there's a scenario for that. Plug everything in the point slope form, and then simplify your answer back to y equals mx plus b format. So let's do 3a. Line has a slope of 3/5 and passes through the point 20, 9. So they told you directly what the slope was, and they told you directly what x1 and y1 was. So, first thing is to put everything into the formula. So, when you plug it into the formula, always plug in as is. Plug in as it was given to you. So you have y minus 20 equals 3/5 x minus, oops, y minus 9 equals 3/5 x minus 20. First step, plug in everything. Now we simplify. So simplify means get y by itself. So 3/5 times x minus 3/5 times 20. 3 times 20, 60, divided by 5, 12. Then to get y by itself, add 9 to both sides. So there's your equation. make sure you show your work so that I can identify what you're doing. Hopefully some of you all have seen it enough times on your Unit 1 test that I kept taking off points for not showing your work that you'll stop doing it. Stop doing it that way. Questions before you do a word problem then? Not seeing any, not hearing any. If it's just that easy, with that, I'll take that too. Part B. One of your friends gave a recommendation for a caterer that charges $22 per person served. For a party last year with 45 guests, the caterer charged $1,200. Write the equation that models the total catering charge Y in relation to the number of guests X. So I gotta remind myself to fix the typo. But again, read the problem first, see what's in it. Now we start solving. Charges $22 per person served. $22 per person, that's a rate of change. So there's our slope. The 45 and the 1200 were not given to you for no reason. So they told you that the catering charge, so the total catering charge is equal to Y, and that the number of guests was X. So since there were 45 guests and you were charged 1,200, that means you have a slope of 22 and you have a point of 45, comma, 1,200. So we have extracted the information out of the problem. Any questions before we continue? And if you're thinking of what to ask yourself, could I have figured that out if Mr. Lowe didn't just say that? Or if I was sitting by myself and I had to do it? If the answer is no, figure out where you would have gotten stuff, and that's what you ask. But we have the slope, we have the point, we have everything that we need to write the equation. So let's do that. Take out point slope form from our toolbox, plug in it. Okay. So it's set up for us to solve it up. Yes, thanks. So, now that we've set it up correctly, we can go ahead and solve it out. So we have y minus 1,200 equals 22x minus, let's see, 90 times 11, 990. Yep. Add 1,200 to both sides. That should give you 210. Check these from my calculator. 1200 minus 990, 210. That's it for part B. So what the equation means is, if you're the caterer, if they want you to work, they gotta give you $210 no matter what. So if nobody shows up, you still get $210. And then for each plate, each person that is eating, $22 per plate. So that's what the equation means. Any questions before we look at case number 4? And that's the last case we'll do today. 5 and 6 we'll do tomorrow. Alright. Let's do the last case that we'll do today. So, if we're given 2 points, so 2 points is the one that takes the most work. Now, I'll put example 4B on the page for those people who finish 4A early. So, 2 points means you have an x1, y1, and x2, y2. So you have 2 points. So the first thing you have to do is find the slope. This time the slope wasn't given to you. So find the slope. So in the case of 4A, we have 2 points. We're going to find the slope. x1, y1, x2, y2. 2.8 minus 3.4 over 2.2 minus 4.6. 2.8 minus 3.4, negative 0.6. 2.2 minus 4.6, negative 2.4. So we divide those out. We have 0.25 or 1/4. If it starts out as a decimal, I don't care if you move it as a decimal. You can give it as a decimal or a fraction. Doesn't really make a difference. So that's step 1. Find the slope. Step 2. Pick one of the 2 points. Don't make that harder than what it is. Just pick one. So you're either going to pick the first point or the second point. It doesn't matter which one you pick. You get the same answer anyway, as long as you didn't do anything mathematically wrong. So I'm going to choose 4.6 and 3.4. Why? Felt it. You don't have to write down what point you chose. I'll see it when you're doing your work. Step 3, use point slope formula. So you got your slope, and you have the point you're going to use. Plug everything in. So once you plug everything in, simplify it back to slope-intercept form. that means distribute. And get y by itself. Yes, I chose decimals on purpose to work with decimals. Decimals are numbers too. Any questions on 4A before we do 4B to wrap up our Thursday? All right, so last part. 4B, you've been keeping track of your grades since Labor Day. At the beginning of week 4, your grade was 84.6%. At the beginning of week 7, you saw that you were at 76.5%. Very good. Write a linear function that models your grade y at the beginning of week X. So they told you what goes with what. So X represents the week, Y is representing your grade. So they told you at the beginning of week 4, your grade was 84.6. So that means one of your points is 4, comma, 84.6. Week 7, 76.5. So now you've got 2 points. We've extracted the information out. We interpreted what they gave us. We now have our 2 points. Any questions before we continue? All right. Well, this problem now is no different than what we just finished doing with part A. Find the slope. X1, Y1, X2, Y2. Mark that there. See, even I don't do everything in my head. That's technology not for you. Negative 2.7. So that means your grade is going down 2.7 points per week. First step is to find slope. Second step is to pick a point. Again, you don't have to write out, I chose this point. I'll figure that out when I'm looking at your work. Point slope form. So, I'm going to pick that point since I was born in April, and that's the 4th month of the year. Once everything is set up in 2-point slope form, then it becomes a simplification problem. at 84.6. We have 2.7x plus 95.4. So what this equation means is that at the beginning of this quarter, or the quarter I'm looking at, I had a 95.4%. And my grade has gone down 2.7 points every week. So that means whatever it is I'm doing, I need to stop doing. Any questions on 4B before we get ready to close up shop?